Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the third edition of Patronistas. Today, we'll be talking with Alexis López Tapia, who is a director of RCT Chile and researcher performing studies regarding the current geopolitical situation in Hispanoamerica. Today's interview and presentation revolves around exactly what is going on in countries like Chile and Colombia, how the game of Go explains the current situation of functional anarchy, and how to counter it. So without further ado, I would like to present Mr. Alexis López Tapia. Good evening, sir. How are you doing? Oh, I think you're unmuted there. Mr. Alexis, you're unmuted. You're muted, sorry. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much, Klaus and Henry. I'm very glad for your invitation.
Thank you. We're honored to have you here and have a very fruitful discussion of what's happening in Hispanoamerica, and especially for the audience to hear it in English.
Okay. Okay. In October of 2 years ago, started in Chile the final phase of a revolutionary process. Start to 20 or 13 years ago. Then, in the vast time of 13 years, the process escalated to the level, and in the October 18 start an revolutionary insurrection in my country. This process stayed today, and in this moment, the next weekend, we have elections for a new constitution. This is the result in the vertical way, then in the institutional level of the process. But in the south of Chile, even today, acts of terrorism is made every day, and this situation in Chile is replicated in Paraguay, for example, 3 weeks ago or more ago, some in Bolivia, some in Peru, Ecuador, and now in Colombia for the last week. It's a complex process because have some elements of absolutely reality. For example, the economic situation in our countries, the inequalities, and so far. But the model applied in Chile is the same model applied in the rest of the continent, even in USA. In USA, about the death of Mr. I don't remember the name now. In USA, about the death of Mr. Floyd, start a process like ours, but stopped when the actual president win. But the process is don't stop really. It's only decrease in the grade of violence, but the process continue. In this presentation, I make a systematically review of the model of revolutionary molecular and dissipated process, and in my mind, for the time, I make a brief of this presentation because it's really long, and I hope you understand.
No, absolutely. For me, I during undergrad I studied political science, and it was really captivating, and I think a lot of the people that our normal audience would be very intrigued and very interested to hear what's happening in Hispanoamerica, and just like the parallel you drew with the riots that the United States had last summer. Absolutely, it doesn't stop here. It keeps shifting left. It's just like a pause, and then they'll pick it up somewhere else, right? There's a saying, right? Never let a crisis go to waste. It's what we've seen here in the United States. Yeah, I'm sorry, you were muted.
Yeah. Okay, let's go.
All right. So, can you guys hear me? All right,
yep, I hear you well.
Just before we get into the presentation, I just want to let you guys know how Mr. Alexis Lopez got famous in Colombia. Sorry? All right, so Mr. Lopez actually had an interview with La W Radio, which is one of the biggest radio stations in Colombia. And that's where he referenced the Dissipated molecular revolution, which was then referenced by ex-President Uribe, which is how Mr. Lopez became so famous here in Colombia, because one of the biggest figures in Colombian politics made a reference to this sort of concept that we're going to talk about right now. And so ever since that interview, if I'm not mistaken, you've been pretty much bombarded by every single Colombian
I don't listen to you.
Klaus, your mic cut off, I think. Brief technical difficulties. My apologies.
Don't worry. Maybe I start.
Please do. I'll pick up from where Klaus left off. He sent me Klaus sent me an interview that you did with Colombian that got my attention. Now Klaus is from Colombia. My family, they're from the Dominican Republic, and similarly, the problems that are being had, they're not to the same extent, but they do exist in the Caribbean, and we agree that we're all on the same wavelength, and I was really interested. So I could see Klaus leave, and you can go ahead and go ahead, Klaus, if you since you have the screen.
That's Mr.
Hey guys, maybe I am start the presentation because you have really trouble with internet, and the audience is waiting for the presentation. What do you say?
Yeah, no, I agree. Seems like the internet connectivity is coming from Klaus's end, because I hear you well and I see you well. He has the screen server and he keeps going in and out. You may go ahead and start with the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, please tune down your sound, please. Thank you. You see a Go board, pronounced Go in Japanese because it's not Go in English. The Japanese say the stones in the board sound Go when you're putting. It's an ancient strategical and territorial play game. It's a game when the opponents try to capture big areas in the territory. You see areas of the board surrounded about white and black stones. In the end of the game, the player who has the biggest territory wins. And it's important because this is the strategical mode of the intellectual of Dissipated molecular revolution, define strategic of the revolution. For the time, I advance very fast because we don't have much more time. We talk about four different themes now. The first is the principle. The principle every time is the communism about the 20th century and now. The last form of that principle is the deconstruction. Is a philosophy. The deconstruction have a specific model of revolution system. This is dissipated and molecular revolution, and this model has a particular strategy, the Go strategy, or prolonged molecular civil war. This is a brief about the communist expression during the 20th century. The communists have two branches. The first branch is anarchism. I don't talk about the anarchism today. The second branch is Marxism. Marxism has different expression during the 20th century. In order for the two unite numbers bottom is not necessarily in time. First, Fouquismo of Ernesto Che Guevara, Maoism for Mao Zedong, Trotskyism, Spartakism, Stalinism, number 6, and the mix between Lukács, Gramsci, the Frankfurt School, the International Socialism, and the Greenberg Archives is a neo-Marxism. And the revisionism Marxism is the number 9. The last revision of the communism as a principle is the Constructionism. The Constructionism take elements from Dadaism, Surrealism, and Situationism, and others the Neo-Kantism, Neo-Hegelianism, Neo-Positivism, and Structuralism. And this is the last version of communism with a principle. We talk about the construction in short terms because it's really long and complex. This is some of the books about deconstructionism and the authors. For example, the difference of Jean-François Lyotard, the postmodernity of the same author, rhizoma. This is a really important concept. Rhizoma signify the model of the roots of the tree expands. This is rhizoma. The Anti-Oedipe and other authors, Michel Desserteau, Paul Virilio, Michel Foucault is a father of the Constructionism. Theory of the Bloom of Tikkun. Tikkun is a deconstructionism collective born in France in '98 and lived for 2 years and disappeared. More books, critical writings, Judith Butler and Radical Feminism, Heidegger of Philippe Lacoue-Labarthe, Jean-Luc Nancy, another author, Maurice Blanchot, and more. But this is a really important books about deconstructionism. The first is Mil Mesetas in Spanish, Thousand Plateau. A Thousand Plateau, yeah, Thousand Plateau. Foucault and the Punitive Society, History of Erotism of Georges Bataille, and Sadiplan. Sadiplan go far because it's a transhumanism, post-deconstructionism. But these four books are really important because the first is the Molecular Revolution of Felix Guattari. Felix Guattari is extremely important people because they go to Chile in '91, but much more important, go to Brazil for 14 times and is responsible of the triumph of Workers' Party of Ignacio Lula da Silva in Brazil. Contribution to the war in course of Deleuze and Tikkun is a real manual of operations. You see a gear jumping the metro station tourniquets, evading the pay. This is the same of occurs in Chile in October 18. And Michel Foucault and the Power, conversations with Gilles Deleuze, and of Tikkun, this is not a program. This is four books are really important for understanding the situation is in development in America. What is the difference? Because
just so basically all this started to develop after the fall of the Berlin Wall, right? Because if I'm not mistaken, when you talk to Santiago, when the Berlin Wall fell, Hispano-American leftists didn't really have anything else to like guide them, right? And that's where the Sao Paulo Forum got started. That's where this whole thing that we're talking about started taking form, if I'm not mistaken. Specifically in the Foro de Sao Paulo with Guattari and right.
Yeah. Exactly. Guattari expand our ideas about South America. '91 start, and now every university in my country, in Chile, has careers with deconstructionism, independent if you study, for example, journalism or engineering. It's not important. Deconstructionism is in all degrees in Chile now and in America. Well, what is the difference between of deconstruction and all the ancient models of Marxism? Deconstructionism is not Marxism, it's post-Marxism, and change the revolutionary subject. In all the revolutionary system before, they working with groups or class, the working class, the proletarian class, etc. In the constructionists don't have class or groups. They work with the people, the person, and each people is possible to make a revolutionary subject because they use the abnormal our category. Abnormal is only the people is not in the norm. In a Gauss bell, the abnormal is the extreme. Well, the constructionists take the abnormal subjects and pretends to put in the norm. But I make sorry, one slide is loose. The second category is the margins. The margins is the same of abnormal. Is the people stay in the margins of the normal distribution, and the constructionists take the margins and put in the center of the society. This is the concept, the basic concept. I'm really sorry for my English. I don't speak every day. It's really difficult to me.
No, it's fine. You're doing perfect. And I really appreciate the fact that you've been able to explain why the sort of progressive left has sort of shifted from the classical Marxist dialogue of workers' rights and helping the working class and class consciousness into a new form of quote-unquote marginalized individual, which, as you said, it's the marginal or the marginalized, the abnormal or the abnormalized. And this is the new revolutionary man as opposed to what we know as a proletariat.
Absolutely, correct. Well, we see the revolutionary model. This is the definition. Through the deconstructionism political strategy, call it a dissipated molecular revolution, and attempts it's made to carry out a new model of horizontally revolutionary action, which gradually seeks to normalize a person's disposition and behaviors to alter the state of that considered social normality of the dominant system. The purpose is to repeal and replace what is current. It is carried out through actions that generate chaos and interruption of normality. This is the definition of Felix Guattari, an interpretation of they say. The second definition is maybe more important because this is a schema of the components of the dissipated molecular revolution, starting from the microphysics of power for Foucault, the microphysics of desire of Deleuze and Guattari, and the microphysics of resistance, Desserteau, before a city composed of systemic domination device based on a logic of war position, the deconstructionists Paul Virillo and others conceived the application of a logic of a war movement as a mechanism of intervention and social and political transformation adjusted to the prevailing historical conditions. In this way, the urban revolution has to be executed through the implementation of a resignified war of movement, sustained by a flow configured by a dynamics of permanent mobilization, incessant circulation and transitory molecular occupation. To descend in the face of a systemic domination based on a vertical logic with fixed, rigid and static position ensured by the state governmental system and destined to guarantee that social immobility, that support order and political stability, the revolutionary model of a new type seeks to decree its suspension, suppression and overcoming by updating a system of fluid, dispersant and dissipate action, and consequently mobile, circulating and with transitory molecular occupation. And this schema is really simplified, but it has the principal aspect of dissipated molecular revolution. And this is an example This photography is in Colombia now, yesterday or 2 days ago maybe. Thus, the dispersed and dissipated actions model guides a way to a process of movement that follows the logic of guerrilla warfare, which is verified through heterogeneous and multiple social movements initially oriented, organized, and mobilized to horizontal mode, which then have to enter the process of molecular dispersion and dissipation. This IP precisely to the verification of a dispersed and dissipated guerrilla war, sustained by a war of a dynamic of systematic, methodical, and daily molecular harassment, incessant and intense flow of attack and withdrawal, destined to break the systematic order in view of transgressing its injunctions, and deconstructing the categorical system that inform and configure it to simultaneously insert and cultivate categories of radical immanence that must enforce it and sustain a new type of effective domination. This is the most important definition of the model. Well, when you put a vertical structure like a state, like police or army, in confront to a horizontal structure like the picture, well, you have a protracted molecular conflict and prolonged, for instance. It's a really problem because the police and the army is not formed to confrontate this type of enemy.
And it's very interesting to note that this is not just the case in South America. We've seen this with the rise of Antifa in the United States and Black Lives Matter.
It's the same.
Radical feminist groups. And I'm not sure if you're aware of Extinction Rebellion in the United Kingdom, which is an extremist environmental group. Very similar in the way that they operate.
And with the tying into like with my experience in university, like what I would call is deconstructionism, and one of the most important books is reading Foucault, and the proletarians. This was mentioned earlier. Are the ones that are promoting this and are inciting the riots we're seeing here, and these aren't these are the proletariats that are in universities and are part of Antifa, as opposed to the ones that we knew it in the traditional Marxist sense.
Okay, I continue. Another definition is really important. This is a not the Constructionist author. Is Hans Magnus Essenberger. These are German people. In '94, writing, the molecular civil war is a degree of social fragmentation that displays at risk the use of the violence by the state as a legitimate monopoly. This is the most important definition, because the problem, I'll be back, the problem is the legitimate force of the state against the illegitimate violence of the revolutionary system. The most important thing, this is a process. This is not only success in the superface of the society. In Chile, start more or 30 years ago. I don't have time for explain this slide, but in my channel has a translation of this slide of English. You can see in my channel.
Sorry, is your channel the RST Chile one, or do you have a personal one?
RST Chile.
All right, I'll link that in the comments.
Okay, thank you very much. And this is the graphic examples of the model. Start with evasion. This is 18 October past, when the students start to evade the metro station tourniquets and continue with contempt. You see a student pass through, but the police try to stop. And then the resistance, more people comes to the stations, and resistance, the special force to access to metro station. And then the disobedience, the people sit down in the tourniquets and stop. Another people try to enter in the station. Then non-submission, the people sit down in the entrance of the station, and all the metro system stop, because the trains don't pass for the stations. Then we come outside the stations and start the insubordination. In 4 hours, we have insubordination in the streets of the downtown of Santiago. Then start the rebellion with a really high violence, and ends in the insurrection. In the night of that day, we have multiple points in all the city with acts of violence, fires, etc. This is the model of evasion to insurrection. This is the model.
Just a question. So the fact that there were a lot of evasions of the metro, and I think that Transantiago, that's what caused the rise in prices, right? Because they saw that there was like a hole in the budget, and they were like, well, we have to raise prices because we have to. And then that's basically the sort of Gabrielo Princip moment where everyone just went crazy and everyone started rioting, and that's kind of the whole thing that got the ball rolling. It was they caused the problem, and then they caused the riots, and then they said, let's offer the solutions to the whole problem. So basically, they created the problem, they created the solution, is basically what's going on here as well, specifically with the Santiago thing.
In the case of Santiago, the price of the metro is an excuse of the insurrection. In the case of Colombia, for example, the intent to change the taxes, and wherever the excuse is not important. The problem is the rebellion. That is the problem.
Exactly, and it was funny how the left promoted the lockdowns, which then caused a lot of, the financial lives of many people to be ruined, which then causes a need to finance things like welfare programs and all that, which then caused the riots. So very, very interesting how in different countries, there's a different context and a different excuse. We create the problem, we create the solution.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, continue. The model has 3 levels, really important. First, escalation, or that is increase of a scale of violence. Next is coping or coverage, activation of multiply an incessant source of conflict, loading attacks after attacks without pauses or with momentary tactical withdrawals in different parts of the city, region, and or country, managing to overcome ability of law enforcement agencies to respond. Multiple, simultaneous and coordinate attacks at all levels. And the end is saturation. This is the most dangerous level, because final immobilization of the state, conflict overflow, at the national level, in practice, all authority is suspended. State overflows to the extent rule of law ceases, technically reaching the point of civil war. Suspension of the rule of law and conflict overflow. This is saturation, the end of the levels. In Chile, for moments, we have in saturation state. In Colombia, some cities, for example, Cuenca, is in saturation state, maybe yesterday. But saturation is the moment with the rule of law is stopped. And very quickly, this part is long. The Go strategy. Why the Go is really important for this? First, the authors of the Constructionism take the Go in this book, Thousand Plateau, as a strategic model of the revolution. Is properly of them. And in '69 in USA, a sociologist student writing this book, The Protected Game. This is a first analysis in the world about the Maoist revolutionary strategy based in the books of Mao. And Mao playing Go and make the campaigns of the Maoist revolution about the game. And for example, this is a Second World War when Japan invaded China in Manchuria, and in the first stage in the map of left up 38, Mao make some little rural guerrillas, and the next year they have many more in the maps bottom, and in 41 you see Manchuria area of the map in the right occupied by the Japanese and enter in the continental China, but surrounding all areas of Japanese control areas is a guerrillas of Mao. You see this form is very similar to the Go board in the start of presentation. Is circ and contra-circ areas. When the Japanese go to Japan, because Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the nationalist force in China fight to the communists, and Mao defeat the nationalist force in 3 months using Go strategy. This is a real important strategy because it's used in a real war. The same thing in the Vietnam conflict. You see 2 maps to the left up is the communist version map of control of territory, and the right down is the USA version of the control of territory. The general Bo Nguyen Yap is a really extraordinary strategy of the Viet Cong, playing Go again and reading Mao. Then they use the same strategy in Vietnam, and Vietnam wins the war.
Very interesting that you mentioned Go, because usually the traditional game they tell generals to play is chess.
Yes.
And I think we'll get into that a bit later, because that shows, you know, how to win a fight in a vertical sense, right? But now we're talking about horizontal. You talked about something like controlled anarchy, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. So very interesting how, yeah, we should teach our generals to play Go now, not just chess.
Yes, absolutely. In 79, an USA writer named Trevanian, but the real name is Rodney William Whitaker, writing Chivumi. It's a novel, but in Chivumi they use Go strategy in the book. In the book, the main character ends living in a Basque country in Spain and allied with the nationalism groups in Basque country. Then the ETA, the terrorist group of Basque country, used the Go because reading the novel. This is the way with the Go comes to Europe, and through the ETA go to Chile, because in Chile the MIR, is a leftist revolutionary movement, allied with the ETA, learn the same strategy. This is an agent, Mr. Humberto Lopez Candia, is not relative from me, for instance. Then they say the MIR development, the Protected People's War, this is Mao, which was a mixture of Cuban, Castro, and Vietnamese strategy. Vietnamese strategy is Go.
Vietnamese, yeah.
Vietnamese, sorry. Okay, this is the way. 69, the protected game. 79, Chivumi. In 18, the constructionists take the strategy, and by ETA to MIR and to CAM. CAM in the south of Chile is one of the terrorist groups in the Araucanía region, like Cauca region in Colombia, when several terrorist groups are operating in the 20 years to now.
If I'm not mistaken, the CAM is supposed to be, what they're supposed to create is a Mapuche state in Araucanía. So kind of like the Zapatistas, but the Chilean version of that.
Yes, exactly. But it's not a Mapuche conflict, because the vast majority of Mapuche people is don't have conflict with the state. It's only a little. It's more simple. We have 3,000 Mapuche communities in the country. Less than 10 is in conflict with the state. It's not a Mapuche conflict. Okay, I advance this. This is the most important thing. We are formed in a vertical model of conflict. We in the school, university, the army, the police, the state, the president, the Congress, whatever, is all formed in vertical concept of conflict. The vertical concept of conflict, like a chess, has a hierarchical structure, regulated conflict, and for the difference between the different kinds of piece of the chess, differentiated structural dynamics. In the front, you have functional anarchy, because they don't have leader, molecular and undifferentiated dynamics, and in Go is irregular conflict, because the stones is possible put in all area of the board. It's really different. The most important thing is that in vertical conflict, your win or the conquest of territory is a consequence of the victory. You need take jaque mate to win. Checkmate. Sorry. But in Go, the victory is a consequence of the conquest of territory. Victory is obtained by conquering most of the physical, this is geographical, and ideological mine territory. This is the most important. We establishing hegemony in the political field without the surrender of the enemy or its total military defeat being indispensable. Then you don't need checkmate for win. You only need conquest territory, geographical and ideological. This is most important.
Exactly. And the second part we usually call it in English winning the hearts and minds of the people. So to convince them that your idea is the best. But obviously with these progressive movements, it's not really that their ideas is the best, it's just that they've been sort of brainwashed into believing these progressive things. So very interesting how that, because chess seems to be the playbook of when we used to have kings, right? When you kill the king, you win chess, so to speak. Right, in that sort of medieval era, but nowadays, as you say, it really is much like Go. You have to capture as much territory, capture as many people as possible, and that's how you win the game of war in today's society, in the 20th, 21st centuries. Thank you very much. I'll keep you keep going. I'll start.
Thank you. Well, you don't can take the piece in chess and putting playing in a Go board. It's impossible. This is the problem of the police. This is the problem of the army when you're putting fighting against the horizontally system. It's not possible. It's not possible. We need training the police and the army in horizontal conflict model. It's absolutely different model of conflict. I advance because the slide is so long.
Yeah, we're gonna skip a few slides for the sake of convenience. However, Mr. Lopez, if you don't mind, I might do an extra stream, maybe just me and Henry, and we'll discuss the actual presentation, some of the parts you skipped out, just to flesh all these ideas. And then maybe if you want to, share that with some of your English-speaking audience, we'll definitely take care of the things you skipped. Me and Henry, we're gonna do an extra presentation on that. No worries.
Oh, okay, perfect. This is the most important thing about the territory. Territory in the construction signify two things. First, I say geographical territory, but really more important, mine territory. And this is the process of the ideological conquest process. Start in the level of the society, in the base of the society, with the introduction of any idea. Then the idea penetration, dissemination, irradiation, and socialization. Then some authority figure, for example, influencer in YouTube, for example, say the idea is valid. Then the idea is validation. When the idea is validated, then legitimated, formalized, and consolidated. We discuss ideas when access to the level of formalization, for example, in the Congress. Well, when we discuss the ideas in the Congress, is because the idea is make the ideological conquest process to that level. Well, in the Congress only we can negotiate the terms of the surrender, because the idea is conquest the territory below. Well, in formalization, when the law is published, then consolidation and projection of those ideas to the whole society. This is the process of ideological conquest is analogy to the process of territorial conquest, because the Go board represents China territory, and in the center of the Go board the emperor rules in the top in this 3D view. Well, if you win the borders of the board, you win the game because has more points in the borders of the board than in the center. If you defend only the center, you lost the win. If you conquest the border, the margin area, the anormalized areas, you win.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you exactly that. So the borders mean the marginalized concepts, ideas, and whatever. So I'm assuming that's where the normalization of trans kids got its start. So it probably started with a few crazy people in academia. Somewhere in the 90s, people thought they were crazy. And then in the 2000s, they were like, oh, okay, let's hear them out. And then in 2010, now there are articles written about it. And then in 2020, they're going to talk about it in Congress, whatever. And then in 2030, if you don't think trans kids are the greatest thing ever, you're a fascista, facho, not neo-Nazi, you deserve to go to jail. So it takes time, it takes decades, but you can definitely see the process forming from the fringes in academia to articles to the Congress. And then when you say yourself, when it's up in debate in Congress, it's pretty much over at that point.
Yes, absolutely. It's too late. It's too late. When the ideas come to the Congress, you only negotiate the terms of surrender, no more. This is a graphic example of the analogy between ideological conquest to territorial conquest. It's the same. This is a stage of copamiento. In Spanish, I don't remember the word in English. In Santiago, between 17 to 28 of October, you see many acts, and the police is incapable to cover all the city. It's impossible. In Chile, in Colombia, in USA, it's impossible. This is a close view of Santiago with the points of violence. Then, in the left, this is a metro network, and in the red points, this is a station with burning, absolutely, and in the yellow, a station with attacks. And more interesting is in the right. The green stars are police stations, surrounded by red areas of narco traffic and delictive areas. Each point of control surrounded by the red areas, like go. And because this happens because Santiago is literally like a go board, because Santiago city has a center area divided for the borders from a highway, literally divided the city between the neighborhoods in the center from the neighborhoods in the borders. And in the insurrectionary revolution takes areas around the center of Santiago. Many places, for example, in blue bottom, Puente Alto neighborhoods, is taken to the revolutionaries, and the police don't enter because that is no, sorry for the concept. It's a I don't remember the word now. En castellano es una zona liberada. The liberated area.
So just like do you remember the Chaz, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone that happened in Seattle? Do you see that Antifa thing? So it's the same thing in Chile?
The same thing. The same thing, absolutamente. Absolutely. And when you see the attacks against the metro, the attacks comes for the border to the center, go strategy, And when you see that the surrounded area about the police station is the border to center. The area in this sector of the I don't know if you see the mouse, but these areas is a most rich neighborhoods in Santiago.
They're the upper class neighborhoods.
Yeah. Then now you see the analogy between territorial conquest to ideological conquest, because for the insurrectionary revolution in Chile, we comes to an election of change the constitution, and then this is a result. In yellow, this is the area where when the change of constitution wins, and in gray, the area of the change of constitution lost. Then the territorial and geographical conquest is analogy to the mine conquest. This is another example, but we don't have time. This is our Araucanía area in the south of Chile. This is the point of violence, but in Go you see this. Literally, they pretend cut Argentina and Chile and make a new state called Walmapu, divided the two countries for establish a new kind of state, of indigenous state. It's a project. And in Bolivia, it's very similar, because the revolutionary process start in the Altiplano, like to La Paz, the capital city, and advance crossing the country to against Santa Cruz, is the another side of the border. Santa Cruz is the most rich state in the country. In Paraguay has a guerrilla, the EPP, and the guerrilla EPP controlled or acting in the border area in the frontier with Brazil, and attacks to Asunción in the center. It's not perfect because it's different the map of Paraguay, but you understand border to center. And Ecuador literally is divided from the middle, because the middle is the mountains, the Andes mountains, and the indigenous cut literally the country for the Andes. So another problem is the border with Colombia, because the border of Ecuador and Colombia is taken for the guerrilla of the ELN for drugs and cocaine production. And finally, most important for the situation now is Colombia. I ask you remember the areas I put in mind. Is they are 3 slides of areas controlled by guerrillas. Yep. And join in your mind the areas, and you'll see. First, the armed forces revolutionary from Colombia, FARC dissidents. This is the control area of FARC dissident in the south of the country. Bogota, the capital city, is in the center of the war. This is the area controlled by National Liberation Army, LN. And finally, the Pelusos, EPL. Border to center. Finally, Mexico. Chiapas, in the south of Mexico, is the middle of the region, is controlled by National Zapatista Liberation Army, the ESCLN, commanded by Subcomandante Marcos. Remember, Subcomandante Marcos is a philosophy student, and this guerrilla is the most advanced guerrilla in the Americas, because is properly a deconstructionary guerrilla. Very most advanced that the all of kinds of guerrillas in the continent.
And as a matter of fact, they actually have mainstream support from some leftists in the U.S., which is not the same with the FARC, because the FARC is still very much not popular in the U.S. But I don't know if you know the band Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're fans of the Zapatistas. So can you imagine, like for example, a band being fans of Sendero Luminoso or like it's not.
No.
It never happens, but with these guys, yeah. So I can definitely agree with you on that.
This is a really important guerrilla because the level of ideology. This is the most important. It's not the arms the important. The ideology is really important. And Subcomandante Marcos stay in the construction now. It's the only guerrilla in the continent stay in the deconstructionism philosophy. Oh, sorry. Finally, this is a general map of 2019, the different violence situation. This is not my map, it's a public map. And finally, USA. In USA, 114 cities registered acts of violence during 2020. 21 states decreed mobilization of the national guard as of July 5. At least 13 people died during the process. And the protests comes or more hard in the borders, in the coast. And this is a continental level boards. Some points in the center of the boards are important. In the case of South America, is Bolivia and Paraguay, the center of the board. In center of America is Mexico, the most important, and in USA, well, Kansas, Kansas is the center. Conclusions. First, the state is excluded as a mediator in the use of force. The force of order and security are taken over, coerced and excluded. Political parties are displaced and replaced by social movements. There is a void of power at the institutional levels. Rule of law is suspended and abolished. Autonomous zone, that is the concept, emerge. Urban and rural guerrillas are articulate, broad, horizontal, scattered. Subversive crime operates as a revolutionary machine. There is coercion, blackmail, and systematized oppression against citizens. Direct violent conflict is generated among civil population. In the final state, there is a state of horizontal, molecular, and dissipated civil war. That is the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your amazing presentation. It has been so enlightening to talk to you about this situation. And unfortunately, you do have to go. There were so many questions I could have asked, so many things we could have gone into. But I did want to ask you permission on something. I think in your presentation with Santiago, you said you had an upcoming conference called Contraproceso, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it's another conference. It's a really long. Takes 3 hours of conference. I'm start the last week presented this new conference, and it's the model of fight against the molecular revolutionary model.
Exactly, because you gave us what the enemy is doing, which is important. It's important to know your enemy. As Sun Tzu says, know enemy and know yourself, and you'll win 100% of the time. So now, I'm really looking forward to your presentation, and I wanted to ask you if it was possible for me to do a translated version of the presentation. You know, I'll take notes, I'll make an English version, and I'll publish it here on the channel so you can share it with
absolutely,
the audience.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I don't have time for makes more programs in English. My English is absolutely poor. Then Thank you very much.
But I really appreciate your coming in here, and well, I'll definitely look in your channel, and if there's any content that is relevant to this discussion or other discussion we may have, I'll translate it in English, and if anything, I'll let you know about it.
And
thank you, Klaus.
Thank you. We're honored to have you here, and we're still getting familiarized with this YouTube thing. I'm a boomer, so I apologize for the first 5 minutes of dead air, but again, I'm honored to have you on here and share your insight on us, because this is like fighting the good fight, and thank you again, sir, for coming on here and giving us the time.
Okay, thank you very much for both and the people in the YouTube channel. I hope you understand. For me, it's very difficult speaking English because I don't speak every day. I study French, not English. Then it's very, very complicated. Remember the words and whatever. I hope you understand the presentation, and I'm very glad for the space in your channel. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
God bless you. You have a good one.
God bless. Bye.
All right, and what a wonderful episode we had today, guys. Unfortunately, his time was limited. He was only limited to an hour, and my internet connection was kind of bad. So hopefully y'all will still be able to hear his presentation in full on the channel here. Hopefully the connection issues that I had didn't mess up his sound or anything. And what I'm planning on doing is I'm going to refer to the stream quite constantly as I try to further sort of read into what Mr. Lopez's works are all about, because there were a lot of things that I wasn't able to talk to him about, a lot of things we could have gone into depth that I saw from other productions and other interviews in Spanish. Now, it's important to note that he's not the originator of all of what he said. He himself will tell you that he's just the messenger. And so all of the authors, that he specifically cited are the ones that you would probably are going to want to get into in order to further understand this topic. So it says here, Alexis Lopez, and that's his channel, by the way, guys. So Alexis López Tapia, RST Chile. Very sorry for my English. I try to improve. No problem. And Daniel Apaulaza says here, Alexis must go to the US and join alliances throughout America. Exactly, Daniel. And that's the #1 reason why I wanted to talk to Alexis, because for those of you guys who are in the Momento Hispano, obviously you know that there's a large Hispanic population in the US that doesn't speak Spanish and that couldn't possibly hope to understand what is going on in Hispanoamerica without a CNN or an MSNBC type of lens. And we already know how progressive and distortion like these companies are. It says Loreto says thanks. Alexis Lopez Tapia. Gigi says great show, Klaus. And then it says Carlos Can, el idioma limita las respuestas del entrevistado. Language barriers limit the interviewee. I think he still got his point across, which was what I wanted to really bring to the conversation here.
Absolutely, and more importantly, the presentation will be there for posterity for the future. I need to read game theory books. Yeah, I studied undergrad. I studied political science in undergrad, and Foucault and game theory. Well, game theory was my most favorite class that I've ever took, and a lot of it with the vertical and horizontal and the chessboard analogy and how that played out in Alexis's country, native country, Chile, is really relevant to current events. And Klaus, as you mentioned, with Colombia, we're seeing it, and yeah, this is, I would say that for posterity, this would probably be more insightful than what you would learn at a basic 101 poli-sci class, because there's a lot of to dissect, and Klaus and I do intend to cover this in a future episode to really get to the, to the bottom and the nitty gritty of what we're seeing, especially with current events in Hispanoamerica. So this conversation will continue.
100%, and there's so much content from RST Chile that simply doesn't make it into the English-speaking world because obviously, as Alexis himself would tell you, he's not, his proficiency with the English language is not very great. He's more of a Spanish and French kind of guy, and so I'll definitely be here translating some of his most important works, and in addition to that, the works of other Hispano content producers that simply don't produce in English for whatever reason. So it's Rational User. Where did you know Alexis, Klaus? I first got into him because of this channel called Santiago, what? Forgot his name, Santiago Giraldo, if I'm not mistaken, Santiago Giraldo. And he's a sort of run-of-the-mill, anti-leftist, sort of right libertarian YouTuber who usually wouldn't delve in these type of conversations because he's more about talking about Bitcoin and the budget and capitalism and all that. And so when I saw the interview with Alexis, I was like, I have to get this guy on the channel. Like, I have to basically promote his presentation in English. Yes, it was Santiago Giraldo. And tell everyone what's going on, basically. It says here. Daniel, it's guys, not gays. Guys, go to RST Chile channel to subscribe. And to all the pochos who are still practicing their Spanish, I would absolutely suggest that you guys go to RST Chile. Go ahead and subscribe because the content there is 100% in Spanish. So it'll help you with your listening comprehension. You'll get something out of it for sure. You get a lot of education, a lot of important conversations that are being had. So hopefully in the next Patronistas, we're going to do a further reading on this stream. As I've reiterated quite a bit, we didn't manage to get into every single point of the presentation. There were a couple of things that we had to skip due to time constraints. And Henry, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, and right. Klaus and I, came to create this channel because we want to bridge that gap and we want to bring people to interview from Hispanoamerica to bridge the gap for our audience, the pochos, as we call them, and there's more to come in the future. Obviously, as the channel grows, we'll progress and get better at and have more exciting stuff and content in the near future. So please do subscribe, give your comments and suggestions and feedback because I'm all open ears. Yeah.
100%. There's this guy here in the comments, Daniel Apablaza. You keep talking about this patriotic revolutionary movement in Chile, or I think it's Vanguardia. Daniel, reach out to me, bro. If you have any insights on what this group is and what you guys are doing, what's going on in Chile, definitely let me know. Rational Leisure says there are some of his videos with subs in English. Now, while that may be true, you have to remember, Rational User, that not everyone is visually viewing the video. Some people, when there's a long video, what they do is that they play it. Say, for example, they're going to work, they're in their car, they're in the subway, so they don't really have the ability to view the video. They can only listen to it, and so that's really what the whole point of the conversation was. It's not just that, hey, you can just watch the subtitles. Some people aren't able to watch the subtitles for one reason or another.
And to that, to add on, to piggyback off that, real soon it most likely will be in podcast form, and it would be available in other platforms in the near future. That's most likely in the works. Klaus, I myself have folks and journalists from the Dominican Republic that I have in the queue that I want to bring in. I come from a fintech and finance background, so there'll be that and geopolitics and et cetera, current events. So yeah, there's a lot more coming soon, and that's all I got right now.
100%. There is so much to talk about. Like it's not even funny. Loreto says, "Gracias, Klaus. Patria o caos, resistencia." Absolutely agree with that. Macho says, "Love your con, Klaus and Henry." Eduardo says, "I am Alexis' student online. If your Spanish is good, reach him to sign in class." I'm not exactly sure what you meant there. You can write in Spanish if you want. I didn't really quite understand what you were saying there. Daniel says patriotic resistance movement. We definitely need something like that. I can definitely agree.
And about the classes, feel free to test the link or comment it, and we'll add Alexis' class to the description, so it'll all be there in the future once this is finalized. And thank you to the audience that commented and tuned in.
Yep, and I think okay, here it says Eduardo says Alexis hace un curso online de politología. So okay, I get what you mean. So I guess I should have called him Professor Alexis. Now I feel kind of bad. But,
or Doctor,
or Doctor Alexis, yeah. And Eduardo says estudió un año con él. So
nice.
Wow, that's very good that he still is able to have a professorship. Usually in the U.S. he would get canceled immediately. I guess I'm gonna reach out to him and tell him about that, because that's a very interesting topic. Because again, because of time constraints, we weren't able to get really deep into the whole discussion. But now that you mentioned that, that's I'll look into it for sure. All right, so
and thank you for commenting it in Spanish. We are a Spanglish or bilingual platform. My Spanish is probably just as conversational as some of the guests and people that get on, and the audience is English. So nonetheless, we do this to bridge the gap in spirit knowledge and yeah.
Right,
so so yeah, thank you, Klaus. Thank you all.
All right, thank you very much, guys. And we might have an asado later on. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. Daniel says it would be a good idea for Alexis to have contact with patriotic influencers from the USA. Absolutely, and that's what we're here for. It's kind of like a disservice and a crime to see that Hispanos in the U.S. don't know what's happening in Hispanoamerica in their own countries, because they literally cannot understand what is being said. Because for the Chilean audience listening to us, you may know this, you may not know this. There are a lot of Hispanos in the U.S. that don't speak Spanish. Their parents didn't teach them Spanish, or they didn't want to, or whatever, for whatever reason they can't speak Spanish. And so if I were to send them a video of Professor Alexis giving a lecture or a presentation, they won't be able to understand it. Especially because there's a lot of technical language and jargon and a lot of complicated concepts that it's just going to go over their head and they're not going to understand. So I definitely do agree that we need to, Hispanos in the U.S. and Hispanos in Hispanoamerica, we have to link up and understand what is going on and protect ourselves from this kind of tide, this sort of very left progressive tide that is befalling upon us. But anyways, I wanted to leave it there. I don't know if there's any comments you want to make, Henry?
Right, and again, to piggyback, as you mentioned, there's a lot of political jargon, academic jargon that Klaus and I intend to follow up and dissect it even more, and perhaps simplify it for those in the audience that maybe want to do a Q&A and follow up and ask questions and have that dialogue.
100%. Well, Daniel says, just consider this. Diosdado Cabello, which is the second in command in Venezuela, basically, already has him on his blacklist for the sole fact of having given talks about the insurrection in Colombia. That's kind of crazy. Loreto says, La patria no se vende, la patria se defiende. And Edu says political philosophy words. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Some of them would get confused with all this sort of very technical wording and all that in Spanish. So I'm trying to keep it simple. All right, thank you very much, everybody, for coming in. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care and God bless.